Hey guys, this is Louie. So, been on the road all day. Wanted to take some time to start working on the conclusion to Paul's story. So, those of you who've been with me for a while, my name's Louie. Like I said before, I'm an addict. I used pretty heavily for about 17 years. All kinds of different things. My main problems were, revolved around marijuana and alcohol and cocaine. Got clean about 4 years ago, and, it was one of the toughest things I ever did, but it was also one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done in my life. And, I started this podcast with the hope that it would potentially help other people who may be considering starting the journey, or potentially people who have already started their path and are already sober and clean to continue down that path. So those who are working the program, those who are in the maintenance phase, third category of folks it may help are people who are what we would define as the normies. The people who can just have a beer or just have a drink or just have, maybe smoke a bowl or whatever the case may be, in the hope that maybe it'll help them to understand kind of what we go through. If you find this helpful and insightful, take a moment, share it with others who, maybe have the same affliction as we do. Or, again, if you find it insightful or helpful, if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave a comment, that kind of thing. Or on iTunes, please take a moment to scroll down to the ratings and review section. Leave me a rating, leave me a review. I can also be reached if you have feedback for me or comments, questions, ideas. I can also be reached via email at selfinflictedrrl@gmail.com. Again, that's selfinflictedrrl@gmail.com. So, the first part of Paul's story was episode 11, so this will be episode 12. He left off with, he went and told the school counselor, 21, 22 years old, that he was going to kill himself if he went back to his apartment. And the last thing that he said was, this was the beginning of when the switch had flipped. Okay, so we're going to pick up about 10 seconds prior to where we left off. And then I'll wrap it up at the end.
And actually, that was sort of the beginning of the switch. I had decided for myself to quit taking the meds. Consequences be damned, I'm not going to let this rule me anymore. And then I'd also read a book on Buddhism. That's the one productive thing I did that semester, is I had this book on my shelf. I tried to read it, but then I actually was able to read it this time while I was having these, night sweats and stuff. The one productive thing I did was read this book. And its philosophy and instructions on meditation started to sort of infect my brain a little bit. So I was like, well, maybe I'm going to try this out. So the night after my parents took me home, that was the best night's sleep I'd gotten in as long as I could remember. It was there's definitely a turning point. That was some time. I was sufficiently numbed from the meds to get honest with my the school counselor about how awful I felt and actually show feeling associated with it, which was impossible when I was on, 1,000 milligrams of Depakote and the other stuff. And so I knew I had turned a little bit of a corner by doing that.
So stopping the meds, the reason you stopped was because even though the emotions didn't feel good, you still wanted to feel them, right?
Yeah. I guess how else could I know? It was like I just didn't even know how I felt about anything. And I was sick of the explanation that they kept giving me. What it is that you're bipolar and you need to be on these meds in order to function normally. And I was sick of telling myself that story. I didn't believe that story.
Well, I feel like our emotions, I think I talked about this, I know I talked about this in an episode, we have emotions, I think, to motivate us to either do more of the good things or resolve the issues that make us feel shitty.
Yeah, they're there for a reason.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, okay.
But if you can't feel them, just no direction.
Right.
It's just, there's some people or some circumstances where I'm sure meds are appropriate, but since I managed to just quit taking them, and it was a very difficult 3 months, but started changing my life based on behaviors and not just, I'm going to take these pills and that's going to make everything okay. I'm very skeptical of medicines like those as a way to sort of deal with mental health problems, because I think mental health problems result from behavior. Essentially, they're behavior problems and the behavior can be subtle, it can be taking place in your mind, but it's still behavior problems. And you learn to correct the behaviors, you start to correct the mental health problems. So what ended up happening is I got a job delivering pizza, living with my parents again, and like going to meetings. But now I was talking more openly and more honestly about what I was actually thinking and feeling. And I was actually like trying to work on myself. Like, I'm going to try and change the way I live in order to change the way I feel.
Right.
That had sort of become...
now, this is still AA meetings?
Yeah, still AA meetings.
I think, talk about it a little bit, because I know you mentioned it in the past, that it can be kind of weird being in an AA meeting.
Yeah.
If alcohol's not necessarily what you struggle with, you know?
Yeah, and that's because let me get there, because I quit going to AA meetings at some point, but at the moment, at least the people were familiar with me because I'd been coming around long enough, and I wasn't completely alone, you know, if I could go there and be a little bit different. So, you know, delivering pizzas, going to meetings, living with my parents, and then practicing this meditation stuff that I learned about from this book, and started to read a lot about Buddhism and meditation. And then I ended up the following summer going back to school, taking summer school to try to catch up, and then finishing college. Things started to get better. There were still lots of problems. There's lots of sort of disconnects between me and other people, and me just not knowing how to properly relate to people, especially, you know, a lot of resentment towards women in general that was, you know, handled very inappropriately, I think. You know, it was just, in some sense, it was just typical college guy that doesn't know how to get laid sort of thing. The frustration that builds, but I don't know, 10 times more difficult because I just destroyed my life and I didn't know how to get it back on track. But things gradually got better. I was a year behind. I was off rotation, so I had to spend another 3 years in school. But I started working, delivering pizzas. I started working while I was in school. Right. Because that really stabled me out, is having work to do on a regular basis. And I could connect the dots between going to work and behaving myself and leaving with a pocket full of cash much more easily than I could connect the dots between go to class, listen to the professor, take notes, regurgitate his bullshit when the exam comes around.
I get money because I behave myself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
The pizza delivery thing, I understood. I could connect the dots between what I was doing and what I was getting out of it. Where with college, I was doing it because my parents told me to do it, and I didn't have any other ideas, essentially. Right. I did manage to finish, but the senior year of college, my last year, I think I was 23. It may have been 24. Whatever the case. There's this Blink-182 song where there's this line, nobody likes you when you're 23, but you still act like you're in freshman year. That was me. So on the one hand, I had finally started to grow up a little bit and socializing with people and starting to have a little bit more fun in college. And it was people were like, oh, okay, I kind of know that guy. I can talk to him. On the other hand, I was 23 and acting like an immature 18-year-old that had just cut loose. But during this phase of this final year, I had a beer at some point when I was hanging out with some friends. And this was the beginning of the end of my time in AA. Because I learned something very valuable about myself. I am not an alcoholic. Okay. But I'd been saying that I was for 6 years before that, from 17 to 24 when I quit going. However many years is that? 7 years.
Did you think that you were when you were saying it, or were you just saying it to fit into the meeting?
Mostly just to fit into the meeting. Okay. But I knew I obviously had some problem. Right. Yeah. And then some of the description in the big book matched how I was feeling about myself, sense of isolation and being unhappy and all that. But I mean, the big book is like, I'm not stupid. The big book is very clear. It even says on page 20 something where like, run the experiment. It may be worth the bad case of shakes to get a full knowledge of your condition. Go have a drink if you aren't sure whether or not you're alcoholic, and see if you have this. So I ran that experiment, and then I ran it a few more times. I realized, like, well, okay, I can have a drink. I can have a beer. I can go to a party on Friday night, and I can get drunk, and I can sleep it off, and it kind of sucks. But then I don't need to drink more the next morning, and I'm not trying to go party the next night. I'm like, oh, I like drinking beer. I can just kind of maintain the buzz. I can drink beer, and that can be part of my life. And why was I saying I was an alcoholic? That's obviously not right. So my experience didn't match what I believed to be true about my life at that point.
Right.
But perhaps predictably so, after a few months of learning, oh, I guess I can drink, I started to associate with people I knew that smoked pot a little bit. And that, you would think with how much I had wrecked my life that I would know better than to try to get high again. You would think that. But it was almost like I had to prove it to myself that I can find a way. It wasn't, I can find a way to make this work. It was that old, same insanity that
I've heard people say that before.
I had to find a way to fit weed into my life. It was ridiculously important to me that I found a way to do that. But every time I connected with somebody and got high, I would just basically have a panic attack again.
Okay.
But I knew I liked it. I was dead set. on finding a way to do it.
Make it work.
Have to. So as I graduated college and went on with my life and started to kind of get things together a little bit, even though I wasn't smoking on a regular basis, I would periodically rerun this experiment and try, how am I going to fit weed into my life? I've got to find a way to do it. And every time I would basically it's like it would trigger a post-traumatic stress reaction, or I would just get paranoid and weird and jumpy and just catatonic. I kept trying. And by the time weed was legalized in Colorado, my sister was living in Colorado, I had sort of thought that I had figured out how to do it. Because if I didn't involve myself or surround myself with other people while I was high, then I could just kind of be alone and be stoned and enjoy the experience. So what became of the experiment here and there, and at this point, I really am getting my life together. I ended up earning a master's in math education. I was able to get into a relationship that I actually wanted to be in, and it didn't last, but it was much more exciting, and I was actually available to her emotionally, and treated her as well as I knew how to treat her. It was chaotic as a lot of people's 20-something relationships could be, but it was, I was able to get into it, which it wasn't even a possibility a few years before. But yeah, so the weed. But by the time I figured out, I thought I sort of figured out how to do it. If I just spend my time alone and be high, that'll be okay. But so what ended up happening as years went on, as I went through my 20s and into my 30s, is I started spending more and more time alone being high.
Yeah, see, when you said I can do it if I'm alone, I was like, well, that would work if we were all lived on a desert island and didn't need human interaction to... Yeah. I don't know.
I sort of got exactly what I wanted, and hated every minute of it eventually. not at first, but it went from running the experiment to regularly trying to be alone, and just that's just how I want to spend my time, is I want to be alone. And so it sort of, the way it had been earlier in my life when I got high for the first time, but then it was only here and there, and then, okay, well now it's every weekend, and then, okay, well now I'm going to sneak out on Tuesday night, okay, now it's every day. That same pattern basically played itself out at 10, 15 years later.
So that phenomenon is not foreign to me. The interval shrinks, and the frequency increases.
Yeah. And, it didn't matter how sort of careful I was, how sort of much I tried to control the circumstances. It just became a daily thing again. And the other thing that, okay, now that I've got this figured out, how to just be high alone, well, what I need to do is learn how to be high with other people. This is, when I look back on it, it's such a waste of time and energy. For whatever reason, it was very important to me. But every time I would go get high with other people, it was the same thing, the sort of catatonic, socially, I don't know. It was like I would just be transported back in time to the person I had been when I was 17. And things were really bad. But I kept running the experiment and started to have these like really embarrassing moments, just like I had back when I was 17. But now I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm still having the same problems of like getting high and then getting closed off and thinking everybody's talking about me and acting really bizarre, strange. And so after a particularly painful night, I think what happened is Thanksgiving break. I was teaching at a school at the time. Thanksgiving break came around, and so I pretty much made it my mission to just get high. Because finally I've got a full week and I don't have to worry about any responsibilities at work, so I can just be high the whole time, which is basically what I did. And then the Sunday night, right before I was supposed to go back to work, and again, that's just where I told myself, well, okay, I'm not going to smoke anything on Sunday, and I'll, get ready and get my S together and go be a teacher tomorrow morning. But no, 10 o'clock Sunday night, I get a text from a friend. I'm like, okay, yeah, boom, I'm there. And I'm over there getting high, 10 o'clock at night before I have to go to work. There is no self-restraint, no ability to practice self-control. And then I had a terrible time.
No ability to practice self-control, even though you knew there would be consequences associated with that behavior.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I don't know what I knew. I don't know. It's that addictive mind.
Yeah.
Where it just refuses to look at the consequences. And
right.
It's like the most important thing is that I go get high tonight. All other things be damned. And so I went, and then the following Monday was terrible because I didn't even have any fun. It was the same experience of just being sort of socially catatonic. And then I don't get home till 2 a.m. and don't get much sleep. And that Monday was just terrible.
Brutal.
Just terrible Monday.
Right.
And within a few days, I looked up MA and made the phone call. And like so that's what we're talking about turning points. That's pretty much as soon as I made my first meeting. I don't remember if you were there. Anthony was there, and like suddenly, there were people in front of me,
right,
that I could talk to about this obsession that I've had with getting high for my entire life, that I've been trying to control, that I just can't. And I've got all these conflicted feelings because it's like my favorite thing to do in the world, I'm not allowed to do. I can't do something. The universe is conspiring to not let me do it, or my genetics are conspiring, or whatever. I finally had people I could talk to about, and I could lay all of that out. And then you guys were like, yeah, that's right. Come on, we're going out to dinner. You want to come to social night? You want to go play board games? Yeah, dude, we get it. No, we understand. Here's my story. Like, that was it. And I didn't know, but what I needed more than anything was friends who weren't getting high, but knew all about how it was to be stuck there.
Yeah.
So, I've been sober. I haven't smoked any pot in 2.5 years now. And I haven't even wanted to for the better part of the last year or two. Occasionally, the first 18 months, I don't know. I mean, it would crop up, but the desire went away pretty quickly because I had the community and the fellowship of MA, and I could talk exactly about it. I didn't have to change the language because this is Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was really hesitant to go back to 12-step meetings because of all of my experience from earlier on. I'm 17 to 24. I was going to meetings regularly, but I was saying shit about myself that wasn't true, that I kind of thought was true because people told me it was true. in order to fit in.
Was there an element of self-deprecation in telling yourself those lies?
I don't think I knew that I had any other options. I didn't have enough life experience to have those. But certainly with saying that I was an alcoholic, I was like, okay, well, this is what I have to say in order to share in this meeting. And this is what people are telling me to say. Don't talk about your drug addiction. Just talk about it. It's all the same. It's all the same. No, it's not. The details are very different. Whether you're a heroin addict or cocaine addict or pothead or pornography addict or an alcoholic. Yeah, in general, the patterns are the same, but the details are very different. And I think.
I think it's the same in the sense that all those things you listed out fire off dopamine.
Yeah.
And that's what screws us over. But the way that the way that makes you feel or the situations you find yourself in, that is probably what's different,
Yeah, and I needed that to relate all of my experiences and feelings. I needed to talk to other people who had been busy getting high and found a way out of that. In particular, I needed to find other people where that was their drug of choice. That's what they wanted to do most. Because it was my best friend. It was the thing in life that I wanted the most, that I valued the most. And that was causing me all of my problems. Yeah. The vast majority. That was sort of a misevaluation of how useful pot actually is. And to be around other people that had made that same miscalculation and had the same experiences or similar experiences it was crucial. It didn't take too long. And here's where I think my story starts to differ from other people. Like, I never worked the steps when I came back in. Mm-hmm. It wasn't important to me because I think of this experience that I'd had as a teenager and my earlier experience in AA. But it was really important to me to be part of the fellowship and to make friends and cultivate relationships with people that were sober and in the rooms. And the thing is, like, my meeting count has been down lately, and I think what happens is that you can't live your life without a purpose. And if you're a drug addict, you've got a real clear purpose: get more drugs. So that was the addiction has that going for it, in that you know what you're supposed to do with your time. And like I knew my little project in life was to get high and to figure out how to make weed work. And it just took up so much time and energy that would have been better spent somewhere else. Yeah, it's exhausting. It was crazy making. But when you get sober, that need for purpose and direction is suddenly unfilled. And so you've got to do something.
You got to find other things.
You got to find other things. And they don't necessarily replace, because nothing feels like weed did. It's never going to. And I'm grateful for that, because it was such a double-edged sword. Nothing I think is ever going to feel like that did. But suddenly, after a few weeks or months, and I realized, like, wow, I'm sober, and I've got friends who are sober. I'm going to have to do something with my life. I'm going to have to, there's more to that's getting sober is really just the first step to something better. It's got to lead you somewhere. It's not, I don't think, an end in and of itself.
Well, I think having a purpose is part of being happy.
Yeah.
And if we can't find happiness, perhaps that's going to push you back into old behaviors.
I think so. If you can't find something else to dedicate your life to, then you're going to find your way back to the drugs, because at least you've got a sense of purpose there. You might be destroying your life, you might be unhappy, but at least you know what you're supposed to do. Right. But once you sort of see through that illusion, that's not what I'm supposed to do. There's other things that I can do that are better for me, and I should do those things instead. Here I go. And so that's meant, if you'd asked me 2.5 years ago when I first came to the meeting where I'd end up, but like so much of my life, my decision to become a teacher had a lot to do with wanting to maintain a relatively easy lifestyle where I could still work being high into it, which maybe is a strange calculation. I think I was thinking about all the summer break and the winter break and all the time off as part of it.
Did you, when you were teaching, would you get high in the morning or no?
No, I never, but that's the direction I was going, because
it gets worse over time.
It gets worse over time, but that Sunday night, at the end of Thanksgiving, that was the end. Like it only got back to daily use for about a week and a half or 2 weeks.
Oh, before you arrested?
Before
because you'd already been there before.
Because it was like I could see it. I'm
Right.
like, I'm acting like I'm 17 all over. It's like I'm reliving that part of my life for some reason, despite the fact that it was so traumatic and damaging. I am recreating that, and it is an idiotic thing to do, but I don't seem to be able to stop myself.
Right.
And the only thing that helped me put brakes on it was hanging around other people like yourself and like our other friends from the meeting who just were been there and done that, or were like 6 months ahead of me in terms of their growth, and just but like, I mean, that's half of my sort of a social network now. My friends are the people that I've met.
I'm still shocked at my ability to cultivate friendships. Either one. I'm still shocked at my ability to cultivate friendships now, Paul, just because it was something I was so unable to do in the past.
Me too.
And now, like, I can do it.
It's so much easier.
Yeah.
Because I'm not hiding anything anymore. And I'm not trying to feel people out to see, are they a stoner? Can I smoke with them? Yeah.
Can I trust them with my secret?
No, it's just I'm willing. I meet people that still get high, and I don't hesitate. If it comes up, like, nah, I'd go to MA, kind of quit a few years ago. Pass the ball back to me if you can. I'm done pretending like I need to be high to be on your level. Why don't you think about being on my level? I don't say that, but I'm done trying to find the approval of stoners, I think, which is maybe one of the things I was stuck doing. And it's just so much easier to talk to people and make new friends because I'm not preoccupied with this bullshit, and I'm not hiding I'm not hiding my purpose anymore. It was like my what I felt to be my true purpose in life, I had to keep secret. And that's insane. Like, you got to find a purpose that you can wear on your shoulder and be loud and proud about because it matters to you. Yeah. And I guess there's people that do that with weed, the people that are leading the legalization charge. I just don't want any part of that because I think it should be legalized, but so few people are taking the big picture view of, like, when you talk to somebody who really likes getting high, seldom are they able to talk about the drawbacks of getting high, of which there are many.
Oh man, I'm probably going to do an episode about that at some point because my personal perspective, my journey over the years, dude, I used to be resentful and angry about the fact that I choose to get high and I can get thrown in jail about it before at any time. Like when I was 21, 22, 23, 24, I was angry about that. Like deep-seated anger and rage and resentment about it. And I was completely unwilling. I was one of those guys who thought it should be legal and thought it was stupid for it to be illegal for all these reasons. And I was completely incapable of looking at the potential negative outcomes. Yeah. And I think that there's benefits, sure, but there's also...
Yeah, there's benefits the way cough syrup has benefits.
Right.
But
if you drink too much of it,
full of people just drinking cough syrup for fun. Not because they're actually addressing an issue, or they're doing the best to address a depression or whatever, because they don't have any other skills. They don't have any other tools. Right. So I get it. I understand.
So there's two sides of the coin, and I was completely unwilling and unable to acknowledge the other side of the coin when I was younger. Yeah. And now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, well, I know this is going to help some people, but this is also be detrimental to another group of people.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's sort of a sign of maturity, is being to evaluate the relative merits of any activity, the upsides and the downsides and the trade-offs, and how's it good, how's it not good. But you talk to any stoner, and they are oblivious or in denial. I was in denial. I won't put the rest of them in the same group with me. I was in denial of all of the negatives and the drawbacks.
Oh, I was too, man.
But if nothing else, to anyone listening to this, you dedicate yourself to being honest long enough, and soon enough you'll find yourself talking about this, and hopefully you'll find yourself talking about it with the right people, and then it can really grow and help you change your life. Because all I ever wanted was to be happy, and I thought pot had to be part of that. It was just wrong. Yeah, it's wrong, and I'm grateful that I realize that now, because I'm no longer trying to square that circle. I've factored that variable out, and I've moved on to more important things.
Factored it out, spoken like a true math teacher.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So you talked about purpose. What's the purpose? Are you clear on your purpose at this point?
Well,
I know you're working on a couple of projects.
So I mentioned reading a book on Buddhism and getting into meditation. I did some meditation retreats over the years and eventually found my way to a meditation monastery. And I have sort of become a full-on Theravada Buddhist. Okay. and this was true before I got sober, but I kept trying to force getting high into the equation of my life. And having gotten rid of that, my sort of acceptance and pursuit of Buddhist practice and Buddhist teaching has become much more paramount. So much so that I've quit my job as a teacher and I'm on my way to go live at a monastery for a little while. There's some other factors that aligned to make that happen.
Sure.
Relationship ending.
So
I would say when it comes to purpose, that's where I find it now.
Interesting. You've got me doing a little more research and learning a little more about Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
I took like a religions course or something in college at one point, and I did like a bunch of presentations on different faiths, but it was also in the middle of my use, so I don't really remember a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing that stuck out to me about that was, and maybe I'm not using the exact right verbiage, but craving is misery.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like, man, when I heard you say that, I was like, dude, that's like the 3-word wrap up addiction in a bundle and put a label on it.
Yeah.
Craving is misery.
Yeah.
Because I could never eat enough to relieve the craving.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not enough pornography.
There's
not enough weed.
No.
There's not enough
alcohol,
money.
Cocaine, whatever, dude.
There's not enough skydive jumps. Even if it's a relatively skillful thing, there's not enough of anything in the world to really satisfy us.
Okay.
And that creates a pretty significant problem. What the fuck are we supposed to do if we're not constantly feeding some habit? But yeah, that's the second noble truth, is that the cause of misery and pain is craving. This constant need for more. And so what meditation and Buddhist teaching is all about is uprooting that need, sort of learning how to starve the beast without starving yourself.
Interesting.
And I'll let you plug my channel on BitChute and YouTube.
Bring it up.
If you search Thoughts on Buddhism on BitChute or YouTube, you should find my videos.
And how would you describe the channel?
I do 10, 15-minute discussions of topics. So I'll take the first noble truth and just sort of riff on that subject and how I've learned what it actually means, how it applies to the world and our lives. One of the challenges, or one of the goals of the channel, is so much has been sort of, Buddhism has been very westernized in order to make it palatable for people that don't really want to practice Buddhism but want to kind of feel like they're practicing Buddhism. So
Buddhist posers.
I would say the vast majority of Western Buddhists are posers. And I don't mean to disparage them. Everyone wants to do something to help their lives a little better, but the word mindfulness has certainly been co-opted and mistranslated pretty seriously. What it actually means to meditate, or that the meditation has been decontextualized from the rest of the teachings. There's a lot of Western Buddhists that don't even believe in nirvana, and they throw it out because there's no scientific basis for it. Which I get that. That was a much bigger struggle for me. I've been an atheist for quite a while, but to sort of, I don't know. I mean, you can't deny the power of science, because no one would be able to hear this from electricity and technology, space shuttles. Biology, you can't deny the power of science.
Physics, totally.
There's so much there. But when it comes to the human mind and how a person ought to behave and what's, I think there's a lot of space left for religion in society that science doesn't do anything. There's questions, aspects of the human mind, of the human experience, that science is forever going to be silent on. And there's other people who disagree with that statement completely, but
sure.
I'm pretty comfortable in staking out the ground. Here's another option. My channel, as I explore the Buddhist worldview, is basically creating another option for anyone who's looking for changes in their life, or how to deal with just whether it's full-blown addiction or just general dissatisfaction.
Yeah, I've watched it, and it's very thought-provoking, and it's definitely, it causes for some reflection. One thing that I'm woefully terrible at is right speech.
Oh yeah,
right
that's
speech.
the most important part, man. That's
man.
right speech for me. I was such a liar. Right speech for me is more important than meditation, I think.
There's definitely some things to be desired on my end of my behavior regarding that. So I've looked at a lot of the videos, and they're definitely thought-provoking, and I would recommend taking a look at them for everyone.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to be taken away.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. And like I said, when it comes to where I find purpose, and I still got other bad habits, that I feed from time to time, but certainly when I think about the most authentic, most valuable purpose that I've got in my life today, that's it. It's exploring, understanding, and sharing Buddhism without, and doing it in such a way that isn't off-putting, that doesn't come across like, hey, have you been saved? Have you heard the word of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? Because, I don't want to be that sort of religious person, but I can't deny the impact that the teachings have had on me,
Right.
So I just look for every opportunity to, if not share them outright, to demonstrate them and live them out.
Right.
So I'm, unemployed and not in a relationship, so I'm taking this opportunity to go spend several months out at a monastery and really, perfect and refine my understanding. And I'm going to be vlogging it off and on. But I'm also pursuing some other career ambitions that are more demanding than teaching was, because I don't really think I'm willing to ordain as a monk, and that's definitely an option for me. And who knows where I'll be in a few months, but I would rather be a Buddhist in the world, kind of like an antibody in the system,
Right.
in the bloodstream of society.
Spreading it.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So if you had to say one thing to somebody who was looking at potentially making an attempt at getting clean, what would be the one important thing you would tell them?
Tell the truth. Find somebody that you can.
You mean when you say tell the truth?
Honest with.
So internally or externally?
Externally, you got to find another person. It could be a psychiatrist. I've been the beneficiary of lots of good psychotherapy. I eventually found my own psychotherapist that I trusted, who wasn't anxious to give me pills, but was just really good at listening to me and helping me redirect. But, whether I'm talking to monks out of the monastery or my friends there or talking to you guys, the main difference for me was when I came to that MA meeting and I went with, I'm going to say what I actually think and feel. All of my misgivings about the program, all of my misgivings about whether or not I actually want to get sober, all the problems I'm having with weed and the history there. I'm going to be willing to be completely honest about all of that. And I'm going to try to find the right people that are trustworthy, that I know I can be honest with. And I think anybody who does that long enough will eventually find themselves in the position where they're able to break the cycle of addiction.
Right on.
So,
well, listen, Paul, I really appreciate your time today, man. Thank you for sharing this with me and with everyone else. I hope this is helpful to some of you guys out there. I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. If you found this helpful, take a look. If you're in iTunes, rate it, review it, share it with others. Most importantly, share it with others. You never know when you're going to share something with someone. It's kind of like being in a meeting. You say something and, maybe it's not that helpful for you, but you never know when you're going to say something. And it's exactly what somebody else needs to hear in that moment of time. So that being said, get this out to other people, share it with others.
Check out Thoughts on Buddhism on BitChute or YouTube.
If
you want to hear more from me.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll post this up on that channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once we get it out there.
Yeah, I'll be happy to send you an MP3. Yeah, no worries, man. And then, if you have any feedback for me, feel free to shoot me an email. I can be reached as selfinflictedrrl@gmail.com. Other than that, that's all I had. Paul, again, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
All right, man. Let's grill some food, brother.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Hey, guys. This is Louie. Quick addendum to Paul's story here. So, one thing I want to draw attention to is the power of the group. I find it very suspicious that so many of us have tried to get clean by ourselves in the past. And then, finally, when we involve other people and have a support system of like-minded individuals, that's the time that it actually works. I don't think that's coincidental. You hear that same theme over and over again with different people, myself included. The other thing I wanted to draw attention to is, we all have a different way of achieving this. For Paul, part of that journey was his Buddhist beliefs, and part of it was also, in his case, he had an aversion to working the steps. He still successfully made it happen, though. That's all I had. Thanks for listening, everybody. Get at me with some feedback. Selfinflictedrrl@gmail.com. I wish you guys the best.